So moving on through our history, we are advancing to a more complex type of weaving available to us, and this is getting into play really in the early teens of our history. 1200, 1300, that type of thing. We are getting into some fancy type weaving definitely by that time. And so what we have is, what I've got set up right now is called a twill weave, and we're decorating some pretty fancy looking things, but it's actually fairly simple. A little bit different between the way I have it set up on the loom right now and what I've got in my sample here. But you can see, especially in the darker areas, that kind of diamond look that is happening, and you can see the diamonds happening both in all three of the colors. And so we've got a stripe for our warp, which is our long threads, and then a different thread is being used for that weft, and so our cross pieces that we have here creating that overall design. So this has actually 1, 2, 3 little diamonds with overlapping with that. My one that I have on my loom itself is only 2, and so that a little bit smaller, but still overall kind of a neat changeover that you can have even with the loom set up in the same manner. And so what we've got situated with our loom, we got it all warped up and tension is applied, so it's fairly similar along the way. We actually have to what's called spreading the warp. So I have some waste yarn here, that's our bright blue. It's not part of our finished piece, but it just is part of that process of getting it finished. And then we are ready to do our weaving. I have what's called a boat shuttle, and it has a bobbin of thread in the middle of that, and that's going to feed off to create our threads that we have going acrosswise. And we are going to go through a series of movements with our loom. You can see down here at my feet, they have pedals, and these actually lift a portion of our threads up by pushing down with my foot in the situation and creating what we call our shed. And so if you look up here at the top, you can see by pushing down that one treadle, it is lifting and creating a space. Only portions of my threads are being lifted in the process. If I drop and do a second treadle, that lifts up a different set of threads along the way. And so my thread that I have on my shuttle will pass between these 2 layers of thread. So basically we have 3 down and 1 up in the situation, creating this particular pattern. So let me see where we're at. This is where our last one was. So we're going to move to our next one. We pick up the second treadle that we have in our pattern, pass that through. It's called a boat shuttle because it kind of floats on top of our threads that we have here. Bring that up in place, smooth that out. Use what we call a beater, and that smooths our threads into line as it needs to be. Lift up our next shuttle, or heddle, slide that shuttle through again, line up our threads, drop that down, beat it in place. Go with number 4, actually, is what we are at. Let that go through, drop, beat, come back to number 1, pass through, drop, beat, number 2, pass through, drop, beat, number 3, pass through, drop, beat, number 4. And this is actually our halfway point in this situation. So we're going to go back to number 3, not number 1, and we're going to do a mirror image. Number 2, number 1, back to number 4, number 3, number 2, and number 1. And we have actually advanced from halfway. We'll work on the burgundy here so we can see it. We actually started at the middle of our diamond here, and we end up in the middle of the diamond for the next one. Between our stripes, we actually have completed diamonds. It's harder to see though along that way. But those are there, creating that continuous kind of zigzag diamond pattern. And this is repeated over and over and over for the entire length of our fabric to create a panel like this. Now this is a fairly small loom, only has about 22 inches of weaving width, but of course commercially we end up with over 100 inches of weaving width. And the process of getting everything all set up in the early days with our guilds and things that we had available for weaving masters, you're going to have apprenticeships, and they're going to be the ones helping set up the looms so that the master weaver can do the pretty stuff and get that ready for sale. And so you actually have a several year cycle that you work on creating your knowledge base, building up so that you can become a master weaver along the way. And all of that works together to create this. I, however, don't have any apprentices, and I end up having to do all of the steps myself to get to this point. So it's been a fun journey along the way, but I can make some pretty fabric along the way as well, and create some fun things like my towels and other items available to give as gifts and utilize myself in my own home and have some fun along the way with that.